Welcome back. Time to get into some tyre grooving.
I'm currently preparing the Cherokee for winter, and I'm just getting the winter tyres back out. These are the winter tyres I've been using for a while. These are Cooper ST Maxx PORs. I've been using these for about 4 years. It's a pretty good tyre, but it's a far cry from what a winter tyre really is. So I've basically been getting the groover out and trying to sort of improve them a little bit in terms of their ability to grab and hold on to snow.
An obvious question might be, like, why would you pick this tyre as a winter tyre? Because when you look at it, that is absolutely, like as I say, a far cry from a winter tyre. You know, minus the studs, which obviously will make it perform better on ice, but on snow, it's lacking kind of everywhere, really. Like, why would you pick a tyre like that, and why wouldn't you just buy a proper winter tyre? You know, if you want to go to the upper end of the spectrum, like Nokia Hakkapeliitta 44 or a Nokia Hakkapeliitta 38, they're going to be like the premium floatation winter tyre, developed by Arctic Trucks, made of like special compound, siping all over them. You can put studs in them. When they're aired down, they're like 1 metre wide per tyre. You know, that's really what a lot of the guys up here use to do flotation work. They don't use like a mud terrain and put studs on it. For me personally, I bought these for a number of reasons, not just for snow, but for seasonal crossover, so spring, and also autumn as well. Also just because they came with pre-drilled holes for studs, so it meant that I could stud them myself, although I have added more studs because, you know, I just didn't feel like it was enough. And yeah, just based on price, all 4 tyres from Italy for like €1,100, free shipping, which is really good for these tyres. These tyres are made in the US, and it is a very good tyre. It has very low wear, so they last a very long time, which is actually kind of probably a bad thing for a winter tyre, because it means the compound's going to be really hard. And they're super quiet as well. It's a quiet tyre. It's much better than the KM3 that I've actually been running as a summer tyre. So the compound and everything else, it's just not built for what I wanted it for, and that's not the tyre's fault. That's me buying the wrong shit. Yeah, like that time when I, you know, bought a blow-up device, for example, and I expected it to last the winter. Got 2 weeks out of it. So, you know, I'm not expecting miracles by doing this grooving. I'm just expecting better performance on the whole, and, you know, it'll be fun to see how they perform, but let's get started.
So before I actually get into sort of siping this up, I just want to see like whether anything I've done has made a difference to how it airs down. So I'm going to take it down to about 4 psi and just see what the difference is. So I've gone down to 4 psi. You can kind of see their elongated pattern, but sidewall is still kind of like quite rigid. On this back tyre here, which is the one that I've sort of grooved, you know, it is looking a little bit better actually. You know, not a lot better, but, you know, obviously the pattern's elongated the same, I expect, or maybe more, but it just like the sidewall appears to sort of be a bit bulgier. So maybe it's making a slight difference. Still the wrong tyre for the job, but, you know, be interesting to test it out. This is just something I've borrowed from the tyre shop. You've got 4 settings. I'm probably going to use it on 1, just because these blades get too hot and they melt and they die. And you also need a shit picker. These are important.
I'm just starting with the sidewall, just going up through these parts like that. Really just to try and soften up things a bit at the side and just see if it makes a difference. I mean, the other tyre seemed to air down better than one I've done. Whether or not, you know, that's because of this or not, I don't know. Like, I mean, it probably is, obviously, but it hasn't made a massive difference. Well, the sidewalling's all done, and thanks to my little assistant, Max, my oldest son. Me and him are very close, and we spend a great deal of time together, as any father and child should. But check the tool out, this tool. I've got a blade in there, and that's as thin as I'm going to be able to do this, which is about 2 mil. I'm on my last blade, and I've got to be really careful how I use this. So if it breaks, I'm not going to be able to finish this tyre. But I'll show you what I'm doing on the lugs.
You can see the studding's different, so I have to work around the studding and kind of get a pattern going. So on one of these big lugs here with a single stud, I'm just going like that and keeping a bit of distance from the stud itself. Sort of coming up the side there. And then going down there like that. I mean, this is about as thin as I can make these lines. I mean, thinner would be better, but just the way it is, you know, with the tools I've got, that's going to come across there. Just like that. And then from the other side, just going to go down the lug there. And then across here like that from that corner. And stop there. And that's kind of the pattern I'm going for. Now on one of these ones here with 2 lugs, it's just a little bit different. Kind of the same, cutting up through there. Along there like that, and then stopping. Similar sort of thing really, where just connecting the 2 up with like the whole Harry Potter like Z. And then the other side here, just the same, so like going along. And then along there like that. And that's it. And then you've got to get the old stink picker out and just get that beast out there. So that's kind of what I'm going for.
It's a pretty time-consuming job. I think it's probably going to take me about 45 minutes to an hour to do 1 tyre. And it really just depends how it goes. Like now I'm on my 4th tyre, it's obviously going a bit faster because I just kind of know what I'm doing. I've got the groover set up to do an okay job of it, unlike before. But obviously at the beginning of the video, I sort of talked about why I wouldn't be able to have the Hackapolitas on my Cherokee. They're very big and they're very heavy. My front axle wouldn't be able to deal with it. Without it being swapped out, or you know, some other significant modification. The axle would probably need to be moved forward. Yes, a lot of work to put such a big tyre on the vehicle. So you know that there are other reasons too, like the price. You know, I just don't have £3 to spend on tyres. Like maybe one day I will, but not right now. Well, that's it. I've finished this tyre. That took me about an hour. That's how it looks now. Looking a lot different from how it looked before. But before we get out there and I actually put these in the snow and we see what they do, I do get quite a lot of comments like, why don't I use really skinny tyres for driving in the snow? Because obviously a skinny tyre would cut through the snow to the harder surface underneath. I think it all really depends on where you live in the world. Like if you look at the people who do snow flotation work, none of them are using skinny tyres. If you're talking about like 3 feet of snow, which is where it starts to get like pretty challenging depending on the snow, which is another massive factor. A 35-inch tyre is tiny for that kind of flotation work for 3 feet of snow. Sure, you get into certain conditions where you try what you can try. The reality is like in deep snow, you want to be on top of it. Cutting through it isn't going to do shit. This tyre should do a lot better, but the reality is I'd probably prefer to go up to a 37 1250 on my Cherokee. You know, it's really my front axle that limits me on that, and if I didn't have that same front axle, I probably would be on a 37.
So it's definitely looking a bit more winterized, that tyre. It's looking good actually. It'd be really cool to see how these do. I've just aired it back down to about 4 psi again, and you can see that it does air down better than it did before. That sidewall definitely looks a little bit more bulgy. You know, obviously maybe cutting into all this stuff here has just sort of allowed it to free up a little bit, but it's still not a great tyre in terms of how it airs down, which, you know, as I've said, is self-explanatory really with the sidewalling and everything on it. You know, it's got quite a tough sidewall. Like if you look at the BF Goodrich KM3, it airs down a lot better than this. So it is what it is anyway. Try it out.
So we finally got a little bit of snow, not much, but enough to kind of see what the tyres are doing. I mean, my premise is they'll be a bit too hard. I mean, basically the snow's pretty wet though. See, I'm slipping everywhere. Obviously I'm drifting around a bit here, but you know, the point being is like this sort of snow at this time of year is very, very wet, so it's compactable. It's not going to be like when it's minus 20 degrees C and you're just on sugar snow, which is kind of the worst kind of snow really. This snow's pretty tame, so I'm going to get onto a trail. Just going to yeah, take a look at the tyres and just see how they do.
You can actually see the grooving gripping into the snow there, like the siping and stuff, so that is a good sign. I mean, you know, this is barely siping, this is more like grooving. You can see that on the tyre there. I mean, it is holding the snow better But like I said, this snow's pretty wet. It's only 0 degrees C, so these conditions aren't really that cold, but you know, this is obviously a condition that you can end up in, so it's worth considering it. But you can see the studs really don't do anything. They don't do shit in this kind of snow. You skid around everywhere, braking's terrible. You know, these are kind of some of the most tricky conditions, but you know, as you drive on a bigger trail, it'll be interesting to see if it holds the snow.
Skid, gonna go in the ditch. If you're in a two-wheel drive vehicle, you'd be completely stuck, look. Going nowhere. Let's put it in low range without the locker, and we're out. Obviously, it's not exactly very surprising for people who actually drive these kinds of vehicles, is it? So there you go, another video about tyre grooving that's resulted in not particularly great results. I mean, that's the thing about choosing a mud terrain or an all-terrain and expecting it to perform really well in these conditions. Sure, it might appear to perform really well, but it's when you get into those situations that really require traction where you notice them fail. Like if you've driven a vehicle with a proper winter tyre, you will know the difference. There is no substitute. The compound is completely different. Like those tyres, all terrains, mud terrains, all this kind of off-road tyre, the compound is just way too hard to expect it to perform really well. Now admittedly, these conditions are very wet, and these are the worst kind of conditions to be in. 0 degrees, the snow's compactable, which is great for trail bashing and trail making, but it's not brilliant for on-road use, where if you want to use the brakes, you're just going to go off into the sunset and hit a tree, ABS or no ABS. And even studs don't really make a difference in these conditions because there's nothing for them to bite into. If there's a layer of ice underneath the snow, you tend to be able to cut through it with a stud and grip on the ice, but right now, you know, it isn't really like that. Things are just a bit too wet. But overall, looking at the tyre, has it really made a difference? I mean, sure, you can see the impressions in the snow from the grooving, but yeah, I mean, you know, it's not gonna be like night and day, is it? I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a mud terrain. I've just cut a load of slits in it and put some studs in it, but still, the compound way too hard. Now, some would argue being too hard isn't a bad thing, and they're right. In some walks of life, that is that's all we're striving for, but when it comes to tyres and snow and ice, you kind of want the compound to be really soft, so it sort of moulds over everything and kind of adheres to the surface a bit more and basically gives you as much grip as possible, right? Which these aren't going to do. But you know, this is the choice I've got. I bought these tyres not because I thought they'd be excellent winter tyres, because of price, because of budget, because of seasonal crossover, other such things, because of being able to run them as a summer tyre in the future when I was done with them for winter. You know, a lot of different things come into play when you're on a low budget like me. So, you know, this kind of tyre has done me well for about the 4 winters I've run it, but ultimately now it's probably time to say goodbye to them. But I'll run them for 1 more winter. It just means I've got to be very careful about how I run them on the road, or maybe even put them back in the tyre shop and get even more studs popped into them so that they're like really aggressively studded. But anyway, I'm going to end it here. As the season progresses, you'll see the snow change. At the moment it's wet, then it will become sugar snow when it drops below -10. It's going to get real deep, it's going to get very salty and sugary, and there'll be absolutely zero traction, and then maybe my locker will actually come into play when it needs to sort of train me along with a bit of momentum. But who knows, we'll see. The fun's just starting here, and the season's just really begun for winter camping. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. If you've got any tips and advice, please leave them in the comment section below. I will make sure I read it, delete it, and then I'll make a video about it and claim it as my own information for the future. Obviously I won't do that. I appreciate all the advice I can get, and you know me, always learning and all that kind of stuff. So thanks to my patrons for supporting the channel. Thanks for people for watching and supporting any which way they can, and I'll see you very soon in another one. Take care.